My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E.
Alrighty, guys, and we're rolling. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I am bringing you Dr. Holly Duckworth. She's a psychotherapist. She's a hypnotherapist that's a level 3 quantum healer. I'm obsessed. She also has a book out called Finding Purpose, Surprising Wisdom from the Higher Self. She's here to tell us all about it today. Dr. Holly, welcome to your F.A.T.E. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm happy to be
I'm
here.
so happy you're here too. I am obsessed with Dolores Cannon, her work. I have been interested in having a quantum healing session now for a few weeks. And to have you come on my radar and come on the show and bring it to my guests and talk all about it is such very, very grateful for your time. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's get into it. How about we go ahead and start with, how did you come across Dolores Cannon's work? How did you get into quantum healing? Can you start at the beginning there and tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure, Christy. So through tragedy, as so many of us come into our spiritual awakening through tragedy, I did too. So I started my career in mechanical engineering. That's my background, engineering, operations management, that kind of thing. And then eventually worked my way into psychology. And so I had finished my PhD in psychology. But as we were talking a little before, the universe has a way of like guiding you, but you're not really sure what's going on at the time.
Yep.
So I had been working on this PhD, finished my PhD in psychology, still working in the corporate world in a situation where I really did not need a PhD in psychology, right? And so I was doing things like leadership development, executive coaching, that kind of thing. So very organizational behavior, organizational psychology kind of thing. But all the signs had led me to that. So I just followed the path, not really knowing where it was going to lead. So then a couple of years later, my son, who had just turned 20 at the time, was arrested for a DUI. And at the time, Christy, we lived in Phoenix, and it was the notorious years of Tent City. And so my very naive son, first offense DUI. I mean, obviously, he should have been held accountable. But he was in the situation where he was in Tent City with, murderers and rapists and whatever. And here's this very young, very golden child in this bizarre place. I couldn't visit him. I could have very rare phone calls, and he was going to be in there for 21 days. So I was a wreck. It's an absolute wreck, pacing the floor, pulling my hair out, nothing I could do to help him in his situation. And so in one of those very rare phone calls, he says, "Hey, Mom, I found this book. I think you'd like it." It was Dolores Cannon, Convoluted Universe, Book 4. I never heard of her. I would have never heard of her in the circles that I was traveling in. I would have never heard of Dolores Cannon. So just to have something to talk with my son about, we hung up. Amazon, click, get Convo Book 4. And I start reading it, Christy. And everything I had ever believed in my entire life, and here it is in print, and I've never seen it in print before. Okay. And I mean, just just ding, resonating, everything, right? So I start devouring her books. My son gets out of jail, and this was like end of December 2011. And Dolores was gonna she would do these weekend seminars. And this would have been January of 2012. And I told my son, let's go see her. Let's go be in the room with,
Yes.
let's go to the weekend seminar. So he and I went, and, it was healing for him. I had so much. By now, I think I had read like 5 or 6 of her books. I was devouring them as fast as I could. And I had so much just respect for her research, the way she wrote her books. But I'm going to this seminar and I'm going, this hypnosis thing, that works on other people. That's not going to work on me, right? So I went as a total skeptic, right? Admiration for her, but skeptic for me of how this was going to work. And Dolores would put in these seminars, she would put 200 people into hypnosis in a hotel ballroom simultaneously, right? So that's what this was like. So we go into the first hypnosis. It's like a 3-day thing. And there's different hypnosis every day. We go into the first hypnosis, and I'm having this crazy, profound past life experience that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt was not my imagination. And we come out of it, and I'm like, works. It works. Oh my God, this works. Like, I'm going to run up to the stage and tell Dolores Cannon, did you know this works? So that was my introduction to Dolores as a total buttoned up corporate skeptic. And through tragedy, changing the entire course of my life, becoming a QHHT practitioner. And yeah.
I have somewhat not a similar story. I don't even know how I came across Dolores originally, but I had this very same reaction to her that you did. I am obsessed. I'm in the middle of reading those series of books right now. I listen to them at night. But I will literally listen to chapters over and over again, and I will glean new little insights. I love that she has a way of talking about things that allow you to understand them, and I trust what she says. She is so authentic. She reminds me, quite frankly, of my grandma Gentry on my mom's side of this Southern. My grandma Gentry was a Southern woman. She reminds me of my grandmother. She reminds me of an older woman that would sit on the porch and tell you stories to her grandchildren. And the wealth of knowledge that comes from this woman is just, it's transformative. And I think above anybody else that I've come across, and I've been listening and devouring people in that sphere now for the last couple of years, she has been the most impactful person that has taught me the most and has opened up my mind the most. I mean, I'm jealous that you had actually had the opportunity to sit with her in a hypnosis session. Like, that is incredible to me. I wish I would have gotten that opportunity. I would be running for it.
Yeah. So here's how I describe how she writes her books, and frankly also how she speaks. It's like, if you look at her books from cover to cover, they're basically nothing but hypnosis transcripts, right? And there's these tiny little paragraphs of, her interjection of some comment. And so she's not preaching. She doesn't have anything to say. She's just like, I'm just going to tell you what they said. You make up your own mind, I'm not going to preach at you. So I think that's why it's so pure and so true.
100%. For my audience, how would you define quantum healing? What is quantum healing?
Yeah. So, and I think this is really important, especially in context of talking with Dolores. because all of her early books, so the Jesus books, the Nostradamus books, the all the custodians and keepers of the garden, so the ET oriented books. Those were her early books. And what she would do is she would kind of cherry pick clients, people she was going to work with, and she'd go with the same person over the course of years to hypnotize the same person over and over and over again to get the information to write the book. She talks about in The Custodians, her client, Phil, and she worked with Phil for, I think, almost 4 years. That is not QHHT, okay? So that's what she did in her early work. 30 years into her hypnosis career, she finds out that she can connect with what I call the higher self. Some people call the superconsciousness, the soul. She called it subconscious. She didn't know what to call it. And they told her, we don't care what you call us. But we're connecting to the aspect of the client, of the individual that is connected to source, that is connected to God, okay, in hypnosis. And she only found out she could do this when she was in her 70s, okay? So she had been doing this for decades before she found this. And then once she connected with this higher self, then she realized the higher self could heal, like physical healing, emotional healing, mental healing, all forms of healing, spiritual healing, that karmic level healing could happen in conjunction with this higher self. And so then she created quantum healing hypnosis technique. And so what QHHT is, so it's a very specific modality for healing, but all kinds of healing. And a QHHT session is 5 to 7 hours. So it's intense. It's very intense. You only ever have one session though. So I have one client a day come in. I spend my entire day with one person. So it's very intimate, very deep, frankly, very sacred. And we spend all day together. And that client comes in with all of the questions that they have for their higher self. So these are questions about physical health, emotional health, all the healing related questions. It could be questions about relationships, life decisions, past, present, future, anything. And then we spend several hours in conversation, making sure that I understand not only their questions, but the context around their questions. Because when I get them into deep hypnosis, I'm going to have a conversation with their higher self. And just like any conversation, we don't know where it's going to go or where it goes, and it could go anywhere. And I've got to be ready for that, right? So that's the morning. So we spend a couple of hours getting me ready to really understand their questions, their life experience, so that I can manage that conversation to get out of it what they want out of it. Then we go into the hypnosis, and the hypnosis alone, Christy, is 2 to 3 hours. Okay. So, and this is where we call in the higher self. You're in an altered state of consciousness. And then I'm having that conversation, understanding all of the, for example, let's say that someone comes in, this happens frequently with some sort of chronic illness, maybe some sort of autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, let's say, something like that. Well, the very, very, very first question when it comes to physical healing that I'm going to ask the higher self is, why? What's the purpose for this experience? There's always a purpose for this experience. And only after we understand that purpose do we then begin to ask the higher self if it's appropriate for healing. And then healing can happen instantaneously. Sometimes the higher self says, oh yeah, sure. Now that she knows that, she doesn't need that anymore. We can we can resolve that immediately, and they will literally heal stage 4 cancer instantaneously. It could be the answer could be, "No, she needs to keep it because she needs to do X, Y, or Z." Okay, and so she has a responsibility, the client has a responsibility to do some sort of action to get their own healing. Or the answer from the higher self could be, "No, she needs to keep this experience because it hasn't yet served its purpose." But we know the purpose, and so now she goes forward understanding that it's important for her to continue with this experience and why it's important for her to continue. So that's quantum healing hypnosis technique.
That is fascinating. Sign me up. I've been I have been dealing with a health issue for over a decade now, and I have tried many things. It is what has led me. Not, I don't want to spend time talking too much about myself because you and I will do that offline. But I will say my health crisis has led me into being a more spiritual, more grounded, more conscious, more open person. And I think that there must have been a reason why I had this illness so I could make this transition. I am virtually a completely different person than I was even I literally, everything about me has changed. Not everything at the core, your soul is your soul, but many of my habits, many of my friends, many of my thoughts, my feelings, the way I look through the world with different lens on my eyeballs, all of that has shifted for me. And I would really love to tap into my higher self and figure out why and figure out if I'm ever truly going to heal because I am now having more issues and I'm kind of in this position where I'm like, why? I've done so much work on myself. I've done so much to expand and move on into a different space. And what work am I not doing that I need to be doing in order to heal? And I really hope the answer isn't she needs to hold on to this. I really hope, really, really hope that I have my higher self say, this is why. And if she does X, Y, and Z, this will resolve immediately, So I
Mhm.
look forward to discussing that more. Um,
Yeah.
I talk a little bit about, I feel like the more people on the planet that are exposed to Dolores Cannon's work, the better. Can you tell me just a little bit about her work with like Nostradamus, her work with ETs, her work and how she was able to communicate interdimensionally with beings and
Yeah. Yeah. So she kind of stumbled into this work. Her husband, she had 4 kids, and her husband was in the Navy, and so she was quite literally the stereotypical housewife in the 1960s and early 70s. And her husband gets out of the Navy. They moved to Arkansas for, kind of a more, relaxed life. She'd traveled the world with her husband. Um, and so he was kind of thinking, "Well, what am I gonna do now that, my Navy career's over?" And he started doing this was, again, late 60s, early 70s. This was the stop smoking, lose weight, clinical hypnosis kinda thing, right? And, of course, Dolores being the dutiful 1960s housewife, her role in their hypnosis sessions was to hold the microphone. That's it. And he was doing the hypnosis,
oh wow.
okay? And yeah, and so they would stumble upon people in their stop smoking hypnosis session. They would stumble into past lives or interdimensional experiences or these things that weren't helpful to the stop smoking. And then they'd kind of be like, "Go away. We don't want to go there. We want to work on the stop smoking," right? So life goes on. Of course, she's got 4 kids, so she's super busy. And then her husband ends up in a very tragic automobile accident. and he ends up being paralyzed. So now she has 4 kids and a husband in a wheelchair that she has to take care of. So all the hypnosis stuff went on the back burner for years and years and years. It ends up, her husband died relatively early. The kids grow up. And so she's, in her 50s now and going, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Right. And she goes, oh, I want to go back to that hypnosis thing. That was a lot of fun when we were, digging up those other lives and other experiences. And so she just started doing that. She had the freedom to spend her time however she wanted to. And of course, obviously, she was a master at it straight out of the chute and started just getting into the crazy things. One of her earliest books, so she wrote 5 Lives Remembered. That was her first book, and it's her marching one client back through 5 consecutive past lives. And so we can begin to see in that book, all the different kinds of past lives that we have. We've all had lives as men and women, rich and poor, able to disabled, all kinds. Our soul yearns for the variety of those experiences. And you can read that. You can see that in that 5 Lives Remembered. But then she suddenly, the next books she wrote were actually the Jesus books. So she wrote Jesus and the Essenes, and she wrote They Walked with Jesus. And how she wrote those books is she had a client who spontaneously regressed in a past life as the rabbi that gave Jesus and John their bar mitzvah. So both of these books are kind of written from this rabbi's perspective, the life and times, the politics and the religion and the, just how people grew up and those kinds of things. Honestly, kind of gossip about
We're still the same. We love gossip still.
Yeah, they were just absolutely fascinating. And then she spent a lot of time in that book corroborating the archaeological evidence of what was coming out from this rabbi and in hypnosis and the actual archaeological stuff that they were finding in Qumran and found all kinds of corroboration. Then she went into the Nostradamus books. And that was when I think her mind got bent a little bit. Because she's regressing this person into this past life, and they happen to, again, they spontaneously go. She doesn't direct any of this. It's just wherever they go is where she follows. And this person regresses as a secretary to Nostradamus. And it was a young man. Of course, they were all men at that point in time working together. And his job was just to write down whatever Nostradamus told him to write down. Literally a scribe. That's all he was. And so she has this. So here's the person. It's such a time warp. So there's a human being laying on a bed in the 1990s in front of Dolores, but they're having this firsthand experience as this scribe for Nostradamus. And so Dolores says, and only Dolores would have the guts to go here. She goes, well, can we talk to him? Can I talk to him directly?
Yeah.
And so the person in hypnosis is able to then shift consciousness away from the scribe and into Nostradamus. And so Dolores then now had this direct path of having a conversation directly with Nostradamus. And it's just fascinating. So she ended up writing 3 volumes. They ended up interpreting all of his quatrains. Of course, the historians over time had botched them royally. He was repeatedly, that's not what I meant. I meant, yeah. But she was speaking to him in real time. Okay, this wasn't a past experience. She was having live conversations with Nostradamus, separated by 400 years, but simultaneous conversation. And it's just, she shares the conversations. It's just hilarious because one of the ones that I love in those books is she's having these casual conversations Nostradamus about, the weather or whatever. And she's telling him that she's going to see her doctor tomorrow. She has a doctor's appointment or something, or later that day or whatever. And she casually refers to the doctor as she. And Nostradamus is like, what do you mean? Like, what? A woman can't be a doctor. What do you mean you're going to see the she? I think I misunderstood you. Like, no, women are doctors.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. I love that.
Yeah. So she would read the quatrains to him, through, via the hypnosis, and he would reinterpret them because obviously they were all written, they were hidden, had hidden meanings because he would have been murdered through the Catholic Church, through the Inquisition, if he had openly expressed what he knew. And so they went quatrain by quatrain, and she'd just read it in English, and he'd go, "Nope, what I meant was la la la," and rewrite it. And so those 3 volumes of the Nostradamus books are her rewriting,
His words.
his words, but actually him rewriting his words.
I mean, I think that's going to be my next set of audiobooks from Dolores. I think I'm going to go right into that. Like, I'm already like, I'm going to get them after this episode. I'm going to start downloading them and listening because that sounds fascinating. Again,
Yeah.
for anyone out there who has not experienced her work, her words, I even got my own mother into Dolores Cannon, and my mother, very, very devout Christian, very religious upbringing, very not the most open-minded person on the planet, but I've really been drobbling little, nuggets of like, why don't, check out this? And
Mhm.
she's been surprisingly open to things. And I feel like every single day she's really starting to open up to other perspectives, which gives me joy because she's also under 70s. It's not easy for somebody of her age to kind of open up in that manner and start to shift your belief system, in essence.
Yeah, so can we go there for a split second? So, in these religious belief systems,
let's.
okay? And so it isn't a far stretch. So I often say, Christy, I'll use this little quip. I'm like, I'm a past life regressionist that doesn't believe in past lives. So I'll explain. And a lot of Christian writings don't promote the idea of reincarnation, right? And I get it. I kind of get it. I'm kind of aligned with that. But you got to think really, really, like you really got to go up in your understanding. So if we say I'm a past life regressionist that doesn't believe in past lives, well, number 1, time is an illusion. So none of the lives are past. They're all happening now. Okay. So there's no such thing as past lives. We can experience other lives, but all the lives are happening now. Number 2, when I'm working with a higher self, from the perspective that they give me, on that side of the veil, the border between one soul and another soul is kind of squishy.
And at best,
Yeah, we're all one. Ultimately, we're all one. Okay. Ultimately, we're all one soul, frankly. And we are individuated to a certain extent. But consciousness has the ability to have any experience in consciousness in eternity, which is timelessness. So when you think about a religious tradition that says there's no such thing as reincarnation, that isn't necessarily not true. Because when you think about a soul as this squishy kind of not really one person kind of experience of consciousness in a timeless place, they're kind of right.
You have to really think about the concepts and the complexities of what we are to get there. But at the end of the day, it's true. If you think in those terms, for sure.
Yeah.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what are your religious beliefs, and did they change pre-tragedy to post-tragedy?
Huh. Yeah. So I was never really a particularly dogmatic person. I was raised in a Christian church, but I think just like a lot of modern people, it was like, yeah, it was a cool community, but there were so many questions that I would ask my religious elders that they couldn't answer. It was kind of like pretty quickly, it was like, I'm not getting a lot here, right? Um, and then, of course, as in college, I studied all kinds of things. I read the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and, all of the different, different religious, texts. And I think there's something to be gained from all of it. But there's also this thing that all of them kind of make things a lot more complicated than they really are, than they really need to be. And I think that might be another reason why Dolores is so big,
Yeah. Yeah.
just resonates. It's so freaking simple. It's not, there's not 12 levels and 683 rules that you have to no, this none of that. All of us are is just God experiencing God for the sake of the experience. Boom. One sentence, full stop. That's all you need to
Yep.
know. You don't need a
That's
book.
right.
You need a sentence.
I mean, I kind of feel it is sort of designed that way intentionally by man for not great reasons to kind of
Yeah.
control us, to put us in a situation. I talk about religion on this podcast. I try and do it in the most delicate way I possibly can because I don't want to turn people off of the show by dismissing their belief system. Some people are very um, sensitive when it comes to their own personal religious beliefs. But at the same time, I have to speak my own truth in the most respectful manner. And I feel that religion has pumped tragic, a very tragic amount of fear into us. If you
Yeah.
feel that you are going to live in hell, fire, brimstone, unless you worship him every Sunday and, you know, study the Bible and only worship him and he's a jealous God and if you don't follow me, you are going to spend eternity in pain and suffering.
Right. Yeah.
People are playing the
Yeah.
cards like, I'd rather play it safe and do this rather than die and possibly spend my eternity in pain and away from my loved one. I mean, it's very much set up to be um fearful. People are
Yeah.
afraid to think anything other than what they were taught as a child. It's also a lot of programming. I came up in the church in my grandmother was a religious, almost hellfire brimstone kind of woman. And it kind of put a barrier between us because she looked through everything through a religious lens, everything. And
Mhm.
I did not. I grew up, as much as my parents sent me to church 3 times a week, for some reason, I never got religion. I was always an atheist. I was like, if you can't see
Mm.
it, taste it, touch it, smell it, probably
Mhm.
not happening. And it was only through
Mhm.
my own journey of being ill and having to rebuild and look elsewhere to seek my own healing that I opened my mind, got into spirituality, got
Yeah.
into energy healing, got into other ways and other perspectives. That was my journey. But I find that religion in general, I don't think it's been the best thing for humanity in general. I feel like it's been a
Right.
detraction. And I'm not saying every single religion out there is like that, but especially with what we see going on in today's society, it is a
Well, and we have Christy, I totally, totally, absolutely. One of my favorite quotes from Dolores is, "Fear is for entertainment purposes only."
oh, I never heard. Oh my gosh. Yes.
All fear
Dolores.
is,
Yeah.
just for the fun of it, right? But we actually have new religions emerging. Politics
Yes.
is becoming a religion,
Yeah.
right? Science is becoming a religion. And it's the same thing. It's this fear-mongering for the purpose of control,
Yes.
right? It's the same thing. And so the tragedy is that these organizations, whether they're religious or political or whatever, are keeping people locked into this fear. Um, whether it's, it could be as grand of a story as, yes, my soul's gonna burn in hell for eternity if I don't do whatever on Wednesday night, or or if I vote for this person or claim that I vote for this other person or align myself with this political party, then I'll be shunned by my community, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's this fear for the purpose of controlling behavior. And fear is for entertainment purposes only.
I mean, I will say, I've said this before, I am so much less fearful walking in the world today than I have ever been in my life.
Mhm.
I also have no fear of dying. I don't feel like I'm going to end. I used to think that once I died, I see any kind of existence whatsoever. And I would comfort myself by saying, well, I was at peace billions of years before I was born. I guess I'll be at peace billions of years after I die. Like that's how I would chop my death up, you know? Now I
Mhm.
feel like death is a transition. You know, it is
Yeah.
just a transition and
Yeah.
it is nothing to fear. We're all going to die. Spoiler alert.
Mhm.
We're all
Yeah.
done.
So an important part of the QHHT process is we take someone into another life and then through the death process. So you actually experience death firsthand through this other life, through the hypnosis. And so I've been doing this for about 12 years, and so I've never actually counted, but let's say around 2,000 sessions in 12 years. No one's ever gone to there's no such thing. And it is just a transition. What is also interesting in terms of, maybe shedding some light on some of the religious dogma, because the opposite is one of the beliefs is that, well, but you have this beautiful place and pearly gates and yada yada, and it's like, actually, the other side, if I were to use a word, it's peace, but from a human perspective, that might be remarkably boring for most people. It's not good, it's not bad. It's not high, it's not low. It's not great, it's not terrible. It's
Yeah.
nothing. It's just peace. Yeah.
What I have heard other people say also is that here in this 3D plane, our emotions, which in my opinion, dictate a lot of what ends up happening to us because it is energy. You are putting it out in the ether and your universe is going to respond to whatever energy you're putting out. I have heard that when you passed, we don't really carry those human emotions, that ego,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
whether it be joy or pain, we don't really
Yeah.
experience that once you transition. It's much more of a stoicism, maybe a little,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
wise and you're kind of existing in a plane that you're not overcome with your emotional baggage or
Yeah.
emotions are
Yeah.
much stronger than we think they are. They impact us in ways that we don't really even consider on a day-to-day basis, you know?
Yeah. A lot of people will experience what I call the void when they're not having an incarnate experience. And we can incarnate in all kinds of different dimensions and critters, not just humans. But when we're not having an incarnate experience of any form, meaning we're just consciousness, we go to this place I mean, and client after client after client goes to the exact same place. So, and they don't know each other from
Right.
Adam. So,
Right.
kind of probably true. But it's not high, it's not light, it's not dark, it's not cold, it's not hot, it's not big, it's not little. It can't be described. I just call it the void because it's just nothing. It's nothingness, emptiness. But everything is there.
Yes.
Everything comes out of there. Um, so it's just like this um this this field, this like energetic field, but it doesn't have any high or any low or any up or any down. It's just
I
yeah.
mean, it's fascinating. I've had quite a few people on who have had like near death experiences and come back and it completely transforms their entire perspective on what we're doing here and what life is. And speaking of that, through your years of quantum healing, what's your perspective on our reality and what we are doing here, what our purpose is here? Is what are your thoughts on what are we all doing here, Dr. Holly?
Yeah. 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 So we're on the holodeck,
Okay. I love
right?
it. Yep.
So it's a video game, right? And so it isn't real. None of it's real,
Yep.
right? It's all manufactured. It's all illusion. Matter and time is an illusion. And all the quantum physicists are finally figuring this out. And it's so cool to see the quantum physics and the spirituality,
Aligned.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why we want to come into this kind of a dimension to have this kind of experience. And Dolores wrote about it a lot. Three-dimensional Earth, it ain't kindergarten. This is college. And so if you're here walking around as a human being, you're actually, by definition, you're an old soul because you didn't get here the first time out, right? This is a very, very challenging place. And in all of the potential dimensions of incarnation. And so it kind of leads to my book. So finding purpose, surprising wisdom from the higher self. So this was early on in my QHHT career. I started realizing, well, number one, a lot of the clients' questions were the same. And then what really freaked me out was a lot of the answers were the same. Oh, wait, that other guy had the same answer to the same question. Yeah, woo. So one of the most common questions is what is my life purpose?
I would ask
Right?
that as
Everybody
well.
wants to know
Yep.
that.
I would ask that as
Yeah,
well.
what a great absolutely. And then I started realizing, wow, all of the answers are kind of the same. And so I went out and I'm through my PhD, I'm trained in a certain kind of qualitative research. So to do text analysis. And so I went out and I gathered the answers to what is my life purpose, what is my life lesson, and how do I commune with the higher self. So there's three very, very, very common questions of over 400 sessions. So about 430 plus sessions. And I did the graduate level research, the analysis on the answers to all of those. And I found out there's actually only 4 life purposes.
Wow.
I mean, there's a few outliers, but almost everybody could be aligned with one of 4 life purposes. And that they're like, yeah,
That's interesting.
everybody know this. Because if you're waiting on your QHHT session, guys, it's one of these 4. So, go figure it out. So one is for a specific experience. So this could be like to be a mother or to be a father or, to have a certain relationship. Like one of the examples that I use in the book is this client that had the ability to telepathically communicate with dolphins. And he worked in a dolphin sanctuary. And so that very specific experience, it's not like an accomplishment, but an experience. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2 is life as service. So you're here as kind of a supporting actor in someone else's life purpose. So you're here to support someone else in some way. It could be physically, it could be emotionally, it could be through a relationship, but it's a life of service. You're giving your life to be in service to someone else for their purpose. Okay. And then, so these are in an ascending order of most common. Okay. So then the next most common is love, a life purpose of love. So that is to be and bring love, love meaning the energy frequency of God, into this dimension. Okay. So to be and bring love into this dimension. And then the most common, by far, almost half of those 400 plus sessions that I analyzed, the life purpose is to be.
Oh, to be.
To be the only Christy that's been Christy the way you're Christy ever. To be the only Holly that's been this Holly ever. To be, just to be you. To be the only you that's ever been.
To be
That's
your
it.
authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
To be.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And nowhere in there is a doing.
What the next thing I was going to say is it's such a shame that we live in this matrix where we are tricked into thinking we overconsume. There's a rat race. The over competition that we have with each other is insane. The status, the feeling that we need to accomplish so much in our lives that keeps us from really focusing day to day on joy, on our passions, on creativity, on everything that makes our lives super magical and fun and exciting. It all gets sucked out of us because we live in a world that is coming increasingly just more difficult to be here, to live in a safe area, to afford any kind of goal, nutrition, to have a stable job, to, life. I'm sort of thankful that I'm at the age that I am at, because I wouldn't want to be a younger person trying to make it in the world right now. I feel like it is such a much more difficult process than even a 1 or 2 generations ago. And I don't see that becoming easier. I feel like it's going to get harder and harder for people unless you have money, which is a whole nother conversation that makes me sad.
But I think that there's a purpose to that phenomenon, because the universe is driving people to understand that happiness is in here. It never was out here. It never was. There's this, I've been noticing this phenomenon on my Instagram feed lately. Back in the early COVID days, like 2020, 2021, everybody was like, I'm moving to Costa Rica. I'm moving to the beach. I want to find this perfect place for me to live. And now it's like a boomerang. People are like, I was just watching this Instagram feed the other day of somebody complaining about how horrible Costa Rica is, and it's so expensive, and the power grid goes down, and yada yada. And they were moving back to the States, and it was like, yeah, but the happy was never the location,
not geography.
The happy was here. Yeah,
I've mentioned that a few times on here as well. Is that if you are vibrating within at a level which is higher, joy, love, gratitude, appreciation, that will likely show up on your outer world as well. And that is kind of, I feel, a life hack. I know for me, I'm not perfect. I have bad days where I can't get out of my lower vibrational feelings, especially if I'm not feeling healthy. Like, I'm still struggling if I'm not feeling good. I always give myself a pep talk like, you know what? Just recognize that pain and just feel joy anyways. I can't do it. I have days where I can't do it. I'm just like, I feel terrible and I just can't rise above it. But I work on it. It's a practice. I'm trying. And I feel like my life will improve if I continue to think, feel, and believe that I am going to heal, that I am healthy, that only good is going to come to me. And if I find myself struggling with that, I struggle with it for the day, and then I get up the next day and I'm like, I'm going to do better today, and we're going to have a great day, and all of this is great. And I feel that if more people understood that they have a little bit more power over what's going on externally by changing what's going on internally, you could transform so much on this planet just by that very thought getting out into the ether. And it can be different. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on aliens, interdimensional beings, things of that nature. What your experience with quantum healing what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we have lots and lots and lots and lots of, I call them other planet family and friends. They're just from other planets. And they in places outside of Earth, they can have dimensional experiences beyond what we're tied to. So we're very in the Earth herself, and Dolores wrote the book 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. So the Earth herself is a sentient being. The planet has a soul, and she's evolving right now. So the New Earth is about her spiritual ascension. And those of us riding on her back are along for the ride. And so planets themselves have sentient and consciousness experiences, soul experiences, and soul growth, as the Earth is doing right now. And so we can have different dimensional experiences in other places. She has been locked into the third dimension, just because that's what she signed up for, the Earth, Gaia herself. But she's evolving so that she can have extra dimensional experiences for people that are with her, herself, and others that are with her. So she's kind of growing up like a lot of other planets are, which means that her inhabitants then are going through their own evolution as well, because you can only hold the dimensional frequencies of the planet that you've chosen to incarnate on, that you're residing on. So there are so many different other planet friends and families. I have a lot of people that come in and go, I want to know if I'm Pleiadian or Arcturian. And it's like, okay, those are 2 star systems. Do you know how many galaxies there are, right? And so a lot of people will ask, or I'll be in conversation with the higher self, and I go, okay, so does she have a home? Does her soul have a home other than Earth that, maybe she's incarnated in more frequently than other places? And the higher self say, oh, yeah. Well, do humans have a name for that place where where she would call home? No, humans have never seen it before. So most of the other planets where many of us come from as home, humans are oblivious to that particular galaxy or star system, much less planet.
Yeah.
And there's billions and trillions of them.
It's hard to wrap your head around the vastness of the universe and the fact that it never ends, and that there's literally it's hard to even comprehend that it could be this never ending, so many trillions and billions of species and planets that just ever expanding. So it's fascinating. Yeah. As far as quantum healing, do you have any stories that you could tell that have really impacted the huge instantaneous healing, or this amazing healing experience that you could share with everybody that would really hit it home how amazing this could actually be?
So one of my favorite healing stories, and it's just, I love it because the setup is just so ridiculous. So I have this client come in, he's 70-something-year-old man. His son had sent him to me, and his son is an MD. the doctor, medical doctor. And his father was having a recurrence of bladder cancer. He had already had bladder cancer once, been through all the chemo and all of the Western medicine stuff, and now it was back. And the father and the son were originally from Pakistan, and they were devout Muslims too. So here's this older man, son is a doctor, very, certain religious beliefs. And here he is, the doctor's son, sending him to QHHT for healing of his kids.
I mean, that's pretty.
What?
Yeah, that's
Kidding? Oh, okay.
just because it works. That's right.
And so the client, some people are not consciously aware during hypnosis. Some people are. It just depends on the individual. And this gentleman was someone who was not consciously aware. And so we go through the whole hypnosis. The higher self cures his cancer. We find out why, blah, blah, blah. And so I bring him out. He had other questions. So we go through the whole hypnosis. And I'm just bringing him out. People are a little groggy when they're first coming out. I mean, they've been, in hypnosis for 2 to 3 hours. And so, we do it very gently. And I'm, going, well, you might want to go to the restroom now. And he's like, yeah, like, well, take your time, get up. And then, I'm going to work on getting you your recording because all of this is audio recorded for them to listen to. And I said, go to the restroom. And then I've got some pieces on the audio recording I'd like to talk with you about. And, okay. And so he gets up, he goes to the restroom and comes back into the office, slams the door. What happened? Because he had bladder cancer, he had problems urinating. And then, of course, he was instantaneously healed and didn't have problems. And it freaked him out when I'm like, well,
You're
they
healed.
cured your cancer. And so I still have a steady stream of clients from this doctor, the son.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
And I'm like, dude, you could learn how to do QHHT too, and then you could be actually healing people.
I mean, I'm thinking about it myself. Like, I find it so fascinating, and what a beautiful way to help people. Let's talk. We're getting into an hour, but I literally could talk to you for hours. I'm fascinated by this conversation, and you and I are going to be friends whether you like it or not, Dr. Howell.
All right.
You're on the team. Let's talk a little bit about your book, though. And I guess my question is, not only tell us about your book, but what have you learned from your higher self? Have you yourself done any kind of hypnosis from somebody else where you have learned things that you would never have known otherwise without?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll go there first. So, yes, we as QHHT practitioners, we get practiced on. And we train, so that means trainees practice on us. So we have our session. We have more than one session. And I had been told before that my life lesson was patience. And I'm like, patience? I don't like it. That's a lame life lesson. Like, delayed gratification, like I got that, I got multiple college degrees. I get it, And so I'm having this practitioner. I'm like, no, I want to know. So what is patience? How does someone learn patience? Let's go deeper. And the higher self said patience, their definition of patience was learning to manifest time.
Interesting.
Yeah. Expanding, contracting, playing with time. The same way you can manifest things that you can manifest matter, you can also manifest time. And so once I found that out, I started getting a lot of clients that had these time-based phenomenon that really helped me understand, oh, this thing's an illusion. And so one of the stories that I share in the book is this client that I had, and this was her question. So she and her daughter, her 12-year-old daughter, had been actually, ironically, not so much in this business, ironically, but exactly 1 year to the day before her QHHT session, her and her daughter had been at Legoland and bumming around, and she got this phone call from this other woman, and this other woman said, "Hey, our daughters met at church on Sunday. You gave me your phone number so we could set up a play date." And my client goes, "I think you got the wrong number. I haven't been to that church in, like, I don't know what it was, 6 years or 8 years or something." And the other woman's like, "No, you gave me your phone number. I'm talking to you." And so one woman's thinking the other woman's just trying to get out of a play date. And then my client's thinking, this woman just has me confused with someone else. And so my client, there in the middle of Legolands, flips the phone around, takes a selfie, sends it to this woman and says, "Look, you've got me confused with someone else." And the other woman goes, "No, that's you. And your older daughter looks a lot like your younger daughter." And my client says, "I only have one daughter." So she comes into her session like, what was up? What was up with that day? That was so freaking weird. So the higher selves tells her that that day in church when they did exchange phone numbers was a moment in time where their universes did collide. But subsequent to that day, my client lived in a timeline that had her, what was 8 years to her was 3 days to the other woman. Okay, their timelines had separated. My client didn't miss 8 years. She lived her 8 years, but her timeline was on a very different path than the other woman. And ideally, the higher self said the other woman would have lost the phone number, would have never made the call, and then the glitch wouldn't have been discovered. And so that's like
mind-blowing. It was
Yes.
mind-blowing.
Yes, we are all on our own timeline. And that's why when you have prognosticators, like people that go try to read the future or whatever, it's like, "Oh, sweet baby, that's your timeline, but you cannot predict the future for anyone else because your March 20th is not my March 20th. Your 3 days from now might be 8 years for me." We're all on our own timeline because time is an illusion.
That
So, yeah.
is fascinating. I mean, when you really start to think about the complexities of time and shifting dimensions and being able to be in one period and then your vibration, you start resonating and connecting to a different universal. I mean, it's really, there's so much more magic out there than what we allow ourselves
Yeah.
to even consider. We just shut that off completely because we're programmed from a very young age to not believe in such notions. And the more and more
Right.
I learn about the nature of our true reality, the more I understand how magical it is and how interdimensional it is and how, we are much more powerful than we think we are. We are just not awake yet to realize it. But once you start tapping in and opening yourself up to synchronicities, to manifestation, to meditation, to looking within, your life really does become much more magical than it does anything else. Like
Yeah.
the universe wants you to come in and join the party. They're just waiting for you to get online. Look within and start paying attention to synchronicities, to your higher self, to spirit guides. What do you think about spirit guides, and what's the difference between a higher self and spirit guides? Are they similar?
Yeah. So we all have many guides. We all have, most of us have, well, most of us have a core group of guides that are like, maybe 4 to 6 guides that are with us. They've been with us forever. But most of us also have a veritable stadium full of souls that are watching our incarnation. the fact that we're incarnated is in form. It's the golden ticket. It's the Willy Wonka golden ticket. There are so many souls waiting for an incarnation, that those that didn't have the gift of the incarnation are watching us that are, just in like, just curiosity and excitement and, oh my gosh, what's she gonna do next? Oh, this is so much fun. Look at her. I mean, like thousands and millions
Wow.
of souls that are watching every single solitary person. We've got a handful of guides. The higher self is you. The higher self is no different. It's not that your guides are not you. Okay.
Okay.
They're other souls that are differentiated from you. And your higher self is just you, the real you that isn't walking around in the video game.
Do you
Yeah.
find that your higher self, like, is my personality of, because I've talked to my higher self many a times now, especially when I'm at my darkest, and I'm like, you wait till I'm gone. I'm going to come up there and I can't even believe I'm experiencing. You just wait till I get a hold of you. Like, you're going down. Like, our higher selves, is my personality kind of like, are they the same, or is my higher self a much wiser, different, experienced
Yeah.
version of myself? Because I'm wondering,
Yeah. Yeah.
no.
Yes. And what's funny is when I get in, it happens not terribly frequently, but sometimes, not infrequently either. But I'll get into conversation with the higher self, and the personality of the higher self will be completely different than the person. Like I've got some sort of buttoned up accounting dude, and I get into the higher self and they're cracking jokes and I mean, it's hilarious, or vice versa. Like I've got some sort of like really effervescent, bubbly person, and the higher self is like, some sort of like starship general kind of, So no, it can be completely, completely different.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, Dr.
Yeah.
Holly, I really could talk to you forever. I really could. I'd love to have you back on the show to promote anything
Absolutely.
else.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of other topics we can talk about. You and I align on so much, and you know, I'm definitely coming to Colorado. Why don't we talk about how people can get a hold of you? How, if you only do in-person things, do you have a website? How can people reach out to you? And I highly encourage anybody who has been struggling with their health. I am about to hop on a plane myself and enjoy a session with Dr. Holly. So let my audience know, please, how can they gain assistance from you?
Yeah. And not just me, any
Yeah.
QHHT practitioner. There are thousands of us all over the world. If you go to qhhtofficial.com, you can actually look. There's 3 levels of practitioner. Level 1 is just they're the babies, they're learning. Level 2 is fully trained. Level 3, which is what I am, Level 3 QHHT practitioners are certified to be practicing exactly as Dolores Cannon herself did. So when you're having a QHHT session with a level 3 practitioner, and there's only about 50 of us in the
Oh,
world,
wow.
you're assured that it's as if you were getting a session from Dolores herself. Everything is scrutinized. Our offices, how we conduct our sessions, even the tone of our voice is scrutinized to be exactly as Dolores did. So that's what you get with a QHHT level 3 practitioner, and you can find them. There's somebody near you somewhere in the world. They're in Australia. They're in China. They're in Europe. They're in South America. We're all over the world. I'm in Durango, Colorado. And you can find me at awarecaredurango.com, awarecaredurango.com. QHHT sessions are only done in person. You only ever have one session. Most of my clients fly in from very far away for their session. I'm usually booked 4 to 6 months in advance. And so we spend all day together, and you have this profound experience with the higher self speaking to me through you.
I love it. I don't care if I have to wait another year. I'm booking something with you. I am coming to Colorado. So I'm so very grateful that you came on the show today and shared all of this with my audience. I found it to be super fascinating. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you to Dr. Holly. Please go check out her book, Finding Purpose, Surprising Wisdom from the Higher Self. I'm going to pick it up. I'm sure there is a wealth of knowledge in there. Please go get it. Can they find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and
All the ways, Amazon, Kindle, Audible.
I will put all of her information in the show notes if you'd like to reach out to Dr. Holly and get a session in. And with that, guys, we'll see you next week on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. Journey well, everyone. Bye-bye. And that's a wrap on Quantum Healing with Dr. Holly Duckworth. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I loved it. I was fascinated. I'm going to book my own quantum healing session with Dr. Holly for this October. And when I'm done, we will have her back on the show. We'll talk all about it. And I can't wait to bring that to you this October. Who knows? I could come back a completely, totally healed individual. I'm kind of counting on it, and I can't wait to bring it to you. So stay tuned for that, gang. I will leave all of Dr. Holly's information in the show notes. If you want to reach out to her and schedule your own session for quantum healing, I highly recommend you do so. You have nothing to lose. You will only gain a ton of insight and a ton of knowledge about who you are, what you're doing here. And you have the opportunity to ask your higher self anything that you have ever wanted to know about your life. I mean, what an amazing opportunity that could be for anyone, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. I would encourage people to learn about who they are, learn about what we are, and enlighten yourself. Open your mind, gang. That's what we're all here to do. Buy her book, Finding Purpose, Surprising Wisdom from the Higher Self. I'm going to pick it up. I guarantee you, you're going to learn so much in there about who we are, the complexities of our reality. And really, I encourage you to pick that up as well. Next week on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment, I am bringing you a lovely lady named Allie. She's a psychic. We're going to be talking about her capabilities, tarot cards. We're going to talk a little bit about spooky paranormal stuff. It's going to be a fun episode. I'll be bringing that to you next week. If you want to follow the show, I am on Instagram. It's F.A.T.E. podcast on Instagram. Go ahead and direct message me. You can, if you have an idea for the show, if you have a good spiritual story, a spiritual journey that you feel would be a good fit for this podcast, I am open to it. I'm always looking for people who have had near-death experiences that have changed their life, or maybe they've had some trauma that launched them into a completely different path, and you somehow gained some spidey senses or some capabilities. I mean, people are awakening all over the planet, and everybody has a story, and I want to tell it. So with that, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Next week, I'll have Allie the Psychic on. Don't miss out. I hope you enjoyed this episode. One of my favorites so far. Can't wait to have her back on in October. Welcome to your Fate, gang. I'll see you next week. Journey well, everyone. Bye.